My daughter-in-law said, "You do nothing, watch my kids while I travel." She never expected my move. That's how it all began. My name is Margaret Collins, born in 1959 in a quiet town called Maplewood. Back in 2003, when my husband passed away from a sudden stroke, I thought my world had ended. I raised our only son, Nathan, through loneliness, through nights of working double shifts as a schoolteacher just to make sure he never lacked a thing. I felt invisible, unappreciated, but then something happened that changed everything. Today, at 66, sitting in my sunroom with the soft hum of wind chimes, I'm finally sharing this because silence no longer serves anyone. If you're listening, drop your thoughts below and tell me where you're from. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe, because this story might remind you that love sometimes wears the face of courage. When Nathan got married to a young woman named Brooke No, let's call her Elise, I wanted to believe she was the answer to his prayers. Elise had this charm about her, the kind that draws attention the moment she enters a room. But behind the smiles and the designer handbags, there was a sharpness I could never quite explain. At first, she treated me with sugary politeness, calling me Mom and bringing flowers during visits. But as soon as the wedding pictures faded from social media, her tone shifted. Suddenly, my advice became old-fashioned, my presence overbearing, and my offers to help unnecessary. Nathan worked long hours as a civil engineer, often leaving before dawn and returning after the children were asleep. Elise filled those hours with shopping sprees and brunches. She'd post pictures with captions like, "Self-care day earned it," while the kids were left with nannies who changed as frequently as the weather. I bit my tongue for years, telling myself it wasn't my place to interfere. But every time I saw little Noah, the oldest, flinch when his mother raised her voice, I knew something wasn't right. The breaking point came one Thursday afternoon. I was tending to my garden when Elise called. Her voice was unusually bright, like the kind of brightness that hides something dangerous behind it. "Margaret," she said sweetly, "you're always home these days, right? I have a favor to ask." I wiped my hands on my apron. "What is it, Elise?" "Oh, it's nothing much," she said. "I just need you to watch the kids for a week. I'm going on a little trip to Miami with some friends. I already told Nathan it's just for relaxation. You know how stressful motherhood can be." I almost laughed at that, but I held it in. "A week, you say? When are you leaving?" "Tomorrow morning," she replied breezily. "You can come over tonight. I've packed their clothes. It's just Noah, Chloe, and little Ben. Shouldn't be too hard, you don't do much anyway, right?" That last line stung like a wasp. I stayed silent, letting the words settle. She continued talking, outlining her instructions, like I was one of her employees. When she hung up, I sat on my porch for a long time, watching the sky dim into gold. I could have said no. I should have said no. But instead, a calm, deliberate thought crossed my mind. Maybe this was my chance. That night, I packed a small suitcase and drove to their house. Elise was running around, tossing bikinis into her suitcase while shouting orders at the kids. Nathan wasn't home yet. The house looked like chaos wrapped in glitter, expensive but empty. Noah sat on the couch, quietly reading a comic book. Chloe was scrolling through a tablet, and Ben was playing with a toy car. They barely looked up when I walked in. "Grandma," Ben finally said, running to hug me. His little arms were warm and desperate. Elise turned with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Margaret. You're early. Perfect. The kids are all packed, their meals are labeled, and please, try not to mess up their schedule. I'll text you the bedtime routine." I smiled back. "Don't worry, Elise. I'll handle everything." She gave me a quick air kiss and clicked her heels toward the door. "Thanks, Margaret. You're a lifesaver." "Am I?" I murmured as the door shut behind her. The house grew still. The kids' eyes flickered toward me, uncertain. I took a deep breath and said gently, "All right, my little team. Let's start fresh, shall we?" That week changed everything. The first night, I tucked them in early with no screens, no fast food, no yelling. I cooked real meals, not takeout. Pancakes in the morning, chicken stew in the evening. They resisted at first, grumbling about mom's rules and mom's snacks. But soon, laughter replaced whining. By the third day, I began to notice things Elise had ignored. Chloe's school bag was filled with ungraded assignments and notes from teachers about missed homework. Noah had bruises on his arm from what he said was just sports practice, but his hesitation told me otherwise. Ben had frequent stomach aches, which I later realized came from a poor diet and anxiety. I documented everything, every bruise, every note, every strange behavior. I started calling their teachers, explaining who I was and asking gently for details. One teacher hesitated but finally said, "Mrs. Collins, the kids are bright, but their home situation seems unstable. Elise rarely attends meetings, and we've had issues reaching their parents." That confirmed my fears. Elise wasn't just neglectful, she was absent in every sense that mattered. On the 5th day, Nathan finally stopped by after work. He looked exhausted, with shadows under his eyes and worry written across his face. "Mom, I can't thank you enough," he said, collapsing into a chair. "Elise told me you offered to help. The kids seem happier than I've seen them in a long time." I smiled softly. "Nathan, do you ever notice how much time Elise spends away?" He frowned. "She says she's been networking. Why?" "Because there's something you should know," I said, placing a folder on the table. Inside were screenshots, notes, and a few printed photos I had quietly collected from Elisa's social media posts that didn't align with her mom trip. Nathan's eyes widened as he scrolled through photos of Elise laughing with a man I recognized from one of her tagged posts. "Who is this?" he muttered. "His name is Dominic," I said quietly. "And from what I can tell, your wife isn't just in Miami for a girls' trip." He stared at me, speechless. "Mom, are you sure? I don't say things I can't prove." He ran his hand through his hair, visibly shaken. I didn't press further. The truth, once seen, didn't need repeating. The following morning, I took the kids for a walk through the park. It was a bright, windy day, the kind that carries a strange kind of peace. Chloe skipped beside me, her curls bouncing. "Grandma," she said, "are you going to stay with us forever?" I smiled, my throat tightening. "As long as you need me, sweetheart." That night, I made a quiet vow. I wouldn't just babysit. I would save them from manipulation, neglect, and the slow erosion of love that had poisoned their home. Elise thought she could use me, but she had underestimated what happens when a mother's heart breaks twice, once for her son, and again for his children. When I looked around the living room at the toys scattered across the floor, the laughter echoing down the hallway, I knew this wasn't a chore. It was a calling. I didn't know yet how deep Elisa's deceit ran, but I was ready to find out. Because this time, I wasn't just keeping watch, I was preparing for a reckoning. The morning Elise was supposed to return, I stood at the kitchen window, stirring a pot of oatmeal while Noah and Chloe argued over which fruit to add. Ben sat on the counter, swinging his little legs, humming an off-key tune. The house felt alive and peaceful even. And for a brief moment, I forgot that everything I had just rebuilt was standing on a fragile secret. Elise hadn't called. Not once. Nathan had spent the night at his apartment, pacing between disbelief and anger after seeing the photos of Elise in Miami wrapped in the arms of Dominic, sipping cocktails while posting captions like, "Freedom feels good." He hadn't confronted her yet. He wanted proof of something undeniable. And I knew exactly where to find it. When the kids left for school that morning, I called my old friend, Lillian, a retired social worker with a heart as sharp as her wit. "Lillian," I said quietly, "I need your help. It's about my daughter-in-law." She sighed. "I had a feeling this was coming. Tell me everything." I explained everything about Elisa's neglect, the trip, the emotional distance, the signs of manipulation. Lillian didn't interrupt, only hummed softly when I mentioned the children's behavior. "Margaret, this isn't just selfishness," she said finally. "This sounds like emotional neglect. You might want to document things officially." I already have, I said. Photos, reports from teachers, even screenshots. Good. Then let's take it a step further. I'll connect you with a family lawyer and a psychologist for the kids. But Margaret, this will get messy. Are you ready for that? I looked at the photo of the children on the fridge, their smiles radiant and pure. I've been ready since the day she called me lazy. That same afternoon, I met with the lawyer, a calm woman named Rebecca. She flipped through the evidence carefully. You've built quite a case, she said. If what you're saying checks out, Child Protective Services will take this seriously. We can start by filing a formal report about neglect and manipulation. Has your son agreed to cooperate? He's still in shock, I admitted. But he loves his children. Once he understands what's at stake, he'll stand with me. Rebecca nodded. Then let's make sure Elise doesn't have the chance to twist this around. Narcissists like her often play the victim when exposed. The word narcissist echoed in my mind. That was Elise, in every sense. Charming in public, cruel in private. Skilled at turning tears into weapons. For years, she had convinced Nathan that I was meddlesome, that my advice was an attempt to control their family. She had even told the kids that I didn't like their mother, planting seeds of resentment that took years to undo. When the kids returned home from school, I gathered them in the living room. I want to talk to you about something important, I said gently. Noah frowned. Are we in trouble? Not at all, sweetheart. I just want you to know that none of what's happening is your fault. They looked confused, so I continued softly. Sometimes adults make choices that hurt others. And sometimes they forget what love is supposed to look like. But I need you to remember, no matter what happens, you're safe. Okay. Chloe nodded slowly. Ben climbed into my lap and whispered, Is Mommy mad at us? My heart broke. No, baby. Mommy's just figuring things out. But Grandma's here, and Daddy loves you very much. That night, after they went to bed, I opened Elisa's laptop, which she had carelessly left behind. I didn't intend to invade her privacy, but something told me the truth was sitting right there, waiting. Within minutes, I found a folder labeled Work Receipts. Inside were flight confirmations, money transfers, and hotel invoices, none related to her actual job. There were also email exchanges with Dominic, discussing plans for a permanent move to Miami with the children. She had even mentioned using Nathan's exhaustion, and convincing the court that Margaret was unfit due to age. I felt my hands tremble. Elise wasn't just neglectful, she was strategic. She had been preparing to cut us all off, to take the children away and build her new life on lies. The next day, I took everything, emails, bank statements, screenshots, and handed them to Rebecca. Her expression hardened. This is more serious than I thought, she said. She's committing fraud and planning interstate parental alienation. I'll get child services involved immediately. By evening, 2 representatives from Child Protective Services arrived at the house. They asked calm, measured questions, and I showed them the evidence. They spoke to the children privately. It broke me to see Noah's brave little face when he said, Mom always says Grandma doesn't like her, but Grandma makes us dinner, helps with homework, and hugs us goodnight. That alone said everything. A week later, Elise called. Margaret, I'm back, she chirped. How are my babies? I'll swing by tomorrow. I've missed them so much. Her tone made my stomach churn. Elise, I said evenly, before you come, there's something you should know. Oh. What now? She asked, irritation seeping through her fake cheer. There will be a few people here when you arrive. Nathan, our lawyer, and representatives from Child Services. A pause. Then a sharp laugh. You've finally lost it, haven't you? You think you can turn my family against me? How pathetic, Margaret. See you tomorrow, I said calmly, hanging up before she could spew more venom. The next morning, the house felt like a courtroom. Nathan sat stiffly on the couch, Rebecca beside him. The children stayed in their rooms with Lillian. When Elise walked in, she looked flawless, perfectly curled, perfume clouding the air, but her smile faltered when she saw the strangers waiting. "What is this?" she demanded. Nathan stood, holding the printed photos. "Elise, we need to talk." Her face changed instantly from confusion to fury. "You went through my things," she snapped. "Margaret put you up to this, didn't she? She's always hated me." I stayed silent. I had learned that silence is sometimes louder than shouting. Rebecca placed a folder on the table. "Mrs. Collins, please sit. We have evidence of fraud, emotional neglect, and intent to relocate minors without consent. You may want to listen carefully before speaking further." Elisa's bravado began to crumble. Her hands shook as she flipped through the pages. "This is ridiculous. None of this is true." Nathan's voice cracked. "Then explain the emails, Elise. The flight plans. The lies." She tried to cry, but her tears were hollow, more habit than heartbreak. "You don't understand. I just needed space. Dominic was helping me with business opportunities." Rebecca interjected firmly. "Business doesn't involve falsifying bank documents or manipulating your husband and children. You're looking at serious consequences." Elisa's gaze darted to me, venomous. You've always wanted them to hate me. You turned them against me." I met her glare with quiet strength. "No, Elise. You did that yourself." The representatives from Child Services calmly explained the process of temporary custody, evaluation, and counseling. Elise tried to argue, but the more she spoke, the more her mask cracked. Her story collapsed under the weight of her own contradictions. When she finally stormed out, slamming the door behind her, the children peeked from the hallway. "Is Mommy gone?" Chloe whispered. I knelt and opened my arms. "For now, sweetheart. But you're safe. And that's what matters." That night, the air felt different. Lighter. Nathan sat on the porch beside me, his face buried in his hands. "Mom," he said quietly, "I should have seen it. I let her control everything. I thought keeping peace meant keeping quiet." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Peace built on silence is just fear wearing a disguise. But it's not too late, Nathan. You've got a chance to rebuild with truth this time." He nodded, tears glinting in his eyes. "Thank you, Mom. For saving my kids. For saving me." I smiled faintly, watching the stars emerge. "You would have done the same, eventually. I just got there first." And for the first time in years, I slept deeply knowing that tomorrow, justice would start taking its first breath. The morning after Elise stormed out, the house felt still, like it was waiting for something new to begin. The sunlight spilled softly across the living room, touching the framed photos of my late husband, my son, and the grandkids. It was the kind of light that whispered, "You've survived the storm, now grow." Nathan had taken a few days off work. He wanted to be present, to show the children that things were changing. Elise, meanwhile, had gone silent. No calls, no messages. But her silence wasn't peace, it was strategy. I knew her too well to expect an easy ending. The first few days were filled with long conversations and gentle explanations. Nathan sat with Noah, Chloe, and Ben every evening, reassuring them that none of what happened was their fault. I watched quietly as he rebuilt what Elise had tried to destroy. One night, after dinner, Noah asked, "Dad, is Mommy coming back?" Nathan hesitated. "Maybe. But not until she learns how to be kind again." Ben frowned. "Can Grandma stay forever?" Nathan smiled through tears. "If Grandma agrees." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "I'm not going anywhere," I said softly. Those days were about healing, but they were also about truth. Elisa's actions had triggered an official investigation. Rebecca, the lawyer, handled most of the communication, while Child Services began home visits and interviews. The evidence we'd gathered was overwhelming financial fraud, intent to alienate the children, and emotional neglect. Elise tried to spin her version of the story online, painting herself as a misunderstood mother wronged by her manipulative mother-in-law. She posted photos of herself crying, captions reading, "Pray for me. Some people can't stand to see me happy." Her followers flooded the comments with sympathy. But truth has a way of finding its way through the noise. One afternoon, Rebecca called me. "Margaret, the case is moving quickly," she said. "The judge has reviewed the documents. There'll be a custody hearing next week. Nathan will have full temporary custody pending psychological evaluation." I exhaled deeply. So soon. "Yes," she said. "But brace yourself. Elise will fight this. She's not the kind to walk away quietly." She was right. 2 days later, Elise showed up unannounced. I was folding laundry when I heard the front door open. She stood there in oversized sunglasses, looking more fragile than fierce. "I just want to see my kids," she said softly. "Please." "They're at school," I replied, calm but firm. "You should speak to your lawyer before coming here, Elise. There's an order in place." Her lips trembled. "You've ruined my life." I shook my head. "No, Elise. You did that when you stopped caring about theirs." She looked at me for a long moment, her shoulders slumping. "You think you're some hero, don't you? You think you saved them. But they'll hate you one day. They'll see what you did." I didn't respond. There was no need. She left without another word, and when the door clicked shut, it felt final, like the end of a long, bitter season. The hearing arrived a week later. Nathan sat beside me in the courtroom, his hands trembling slightly. Elise walked in wearing white, as if purity could be worn like perfume. Her lawyer argued fiercely, painting her as a devoted mother overwhelmed by responsibilities. But the evidence spoke louder. Rebecca presented documents, testimonies, and photos of the unfiltered truth. When the judge asked if I had anything to add, I stood slowly. My voice was steady but full of years' worth of love and pain. "Your Honor," I said, "I'm not here to destroy anyone. I just want these children to grow up in a home where they are seen and loved. I've been a teacher my whole life. I've seen what neglect does to young minds. I won't stand by and watch it happen to my own grandchildren." The judge nodded thoughtfully. When he finally spoke, his tone was clear and deliberate. "Temporary custody will remain with Mr. Collins. Mrs. Collins is to undergo therapy and parenting evaluation before visitation rights are considered." Elise gasped. Nathan covered his face with his hands, tears streaming silently. I just sat there, feeling an odd mix of sorrow and relief. This wasn't victory, it was redemption. In the weeks that followed, the transformation inside our home was almost poetic. The laughter returned, not the polite, empty laughter Elise had encouraged for photos, but genuine belly-deep laughter that filled every corner. Noah began drawing again, Chloe started helping me cook, Ben built a cardboard castle in the living room and declared himself the king of second chances. One evening, Nathan approached me while I was sketching lesson plans. "Mom," he said, "you've done so much. I don't even know how to thank you." "By being present," I said simply. "That's all your children ever needed." He smiled. "You know, you could still teach if you wanted. Maybe not at school, but something smaller. Something just for you." His words lingered in my heart. And that's how my little art school was born. We cleared out the old garage, painted the walls bright yellow, and filled it with easels and laughter. I called it the Sunrise Studio. Children from the neighborhood came to paint, talk, and heal in their own ways. Sometimes Noah helped with lessons, Chloe made snacks, even Ben, in all his enthusiasm, liked to be my assistant. Every brushstroke on those canvases felt like reclaiming something Elise had tried to destroy: our joy, our unity, our belief that broken families could be rebuilt with love. Months passed. Elise completed her evaluations but never regained custody. She was granted limited, supervised visitation rights after promising to attend therapy consistently. During her first visit, she looked different, calmer, almost human again. When she saw me, she whispered, "You really did love them, didn't you?" I nodded. "Always." She looked down. "Maybe one day they'll forgive me." "Maybe one day you'll forgive yourself," I replied. That was the last time we truly spoke. She moved out of state not long after, and life moved forward gently but steadily. Now, years later, as I sit by my window with the same wind chimes humming softly, I see Noah helping little Ben fix a bicycle while Chloe paints in the yard. Nathan is happy again, calm, grounded, the father I always knew he could be. And me. I've learned that motherhood doesn't end when your children grow up. It stretches across generations, binding hearts through courage, patience, and the quiet determination to love no matter how hard it gets. Sometimes, people tell me I was brave. But the truth is, I was simply tired of watching love lose to manipulation. And when you've seen too much pain, standing up for kindness becomes the only way forward. So if you're listening to this and you feel small, unheard, or trapped under someone's cruelty, remember this. Your love still matters. Your truth still counts. And even when it feels like you're fighting alone, someone, somewhere, is praying for your strength. You've got this. Moral lesson. Love isn't weakness. It's the quiet force that builds again after everything falls apart. True family isn't about blood or control, but about care, truth, and accountability. When courage meets compassion, even the deepest wounds can heal. Never let manipulation silence your instincts or dull your heart. The power of one honest voice, a grandmother's, a mother's, or yours, can reshape an entire generation. Protect love. Defend innocence. And when life tests your patience, choose integrity over ease. Because in the end, what remains isn't who hurt you, it's how fiercely you loved through it.